Send in the red shirts.
All of the goodwill that I've had for Star Trek Discovery, especially after season 1, which I did genuinely enjoy, is starting to erode as this season continues to move forward. This 4th episode, an Obol for Charon, if I'm pronouncing any of that right. First of all, the title itself is so pretentious, it turns me off. But yes, they have pretentious titles in season 1, but season 1, there was some measure of goodness thus far. This season, no, you can't get away with titles like that. I'm intelligent enough to know that Charon was the Greek mythological pilot of the ferry boat that would carry souls to hell. I was able to look up Obol, O-B-O-L, which is an ancient, if I'm not mistaken, ancient Greek unit of currency. I don't know what either of those things have to do with this episode, so maybe some of you more enlightened people out there can enlighten me. So, rather than try to come up with some clever way of doing this review, I'm just going to tick off my list of things that just didn't make sense to me. These are the things that, from a surface level, didn't make sense. So we got Pike talking about, get rid of the holograms. I'd rather use view screens. Okay, thank you for the fan service. Thank you for correcting your mistakes, writers in the writer's room. But that just didn't make sense. You've committed to the holograms just to give us these little tidbits to say, oh, we're trying to line up things to continuity with TOS, when we know you're really not doing that, that your idea of the Prime Universe is different from us Trek fans. It's not necessary at this point. Stop it. We get introduced to number 1, Rebecca Romaine on this episode, who basically comes onto the ship to have a hamburger and fries. I guess that was supposed to be a running joke because Pike comments about it. Other than that, she's just there to deliver news about Spock and his shuttlecraft. Okay, what was the point? She was on for 30 seconds, big deal. Then I believe we cut to a scene where all of the senior officers, bridge crew, I believe, are in the conference room having a meeting. But I don't remember that ever happening on Star Trek before without the captain being present. The captain walks into the room like, oh, what are you guys doing in here? Is this space available? Come on. To have the Saurian, or the Sauron, whatever that creature was, to actually have him call back to a joke that wasn't funny to begin with about his cold. Then we cut to, I believe right after, to the first scene in engineering. And as Tilly is there and Stamets is there and then Jet Reno pops up, it got me thinking as we saw subsequent scenes in engineering, where's the crew in this department? Is it just Stamets working there? How many people run this starship? Is it just the bridge crew? Is it like the far superior TNG episode Remember Me, where Crusher makes the observation, hey, how do you account for all the space? How many people function or work on this starship? When we first met Jet Reno, I said in my review that I think she has potential. I like her look. I like her kind of like, I hate to use the word crustiness, but she has a weathered face. She does, but that adds to the character, I feel. Okay, cancel all that. I can't stand this character. She's annoying. She's obnoxious. So Discovery is in danger. There's a problem with there's a virus that uploads into the computer. I guess that's the writers saw Independence Day on DVD or something. I'm not sure. But that happens, and it becomes clear that the asteroid, whatever the thing was, the space web, was a danger. I don't recall ever hearing the captain say red alert, shields up. Maybe I missed it. I saw it twice. Maybe I missed it. Speaking of the captain, while all this is going on, doesn't it seem a little odd that he would stop to help Michael, or even Michael would stop to help Saru to sickbay? Which is why I ask, how many people work on this ship? You've got the captain and one of the senior officers helping Saru to sickbay. And then when they get in sickbay, they have a conversation while they're helping Dr. Pollard with patients. Is that where the captain is supposed to be doing an emergency crisis? I think it's that same scene where they're in sickbay when Saru reveals he's dying or something like that. I can't remember, but Michael makes a comment like, it's illogical for a virus to kill its host. Okay, I'm not a med student. I'm not a doctor, but that's exactly what viruses do. They inhabit a host. They attempt to inject their DNA or incorporate their DNA into the host. That's what causes the illness. and they live off the host until the host dies. Logic in this context is immaterial. That's how viruses work. It's not like the viruses consciously intend to kill the host. If the virus had its way, the host would be alive in perpetuity so they can continue to feed off of the host. But, that's kind of how HIV works. It does kill people, unfortunately. So, yeah, that was a stupid line to write. I want to go back to Captain Pike for a second. I'm noticing a trend here that I'm not liking. When we first met him, I thought Anson Mount looked the part. He had that captain's look, strong. It had nothing to do with his gender, but he just had a nice look for captain. He had a charisma. He kind of had like that Kirk swagger. As we're going along with his character in these subsequent episodes, it seems like most of the time, all Captain Pike does is react to other people telling him things. Or he reacts when he should be commanding. For example, in a previous episode, Tilly is in the captain's chair screaming at some ghost alien, which turned out to be the goo spore. She's yelling, and it looks like she's yelling at Captain Pike. And Captain Pike, all he says was, "Are you okay, Ensign?" That's it. Other than that, he takes all of her abuse. He gives orders, like he tells Saru to go to sickbay, and Saru's like, "No, I'm needed here on the bridge." He tells Michael that he needs her for this mission to retrieve Spock, and Michael says, "No, Captain, I'll be of no use to you. Trust me. You're better. You'll be better. Trust me." One of the few times that Michael has admitted someone would be better than she is. And he just stands down. Oh wait, no, he doesn't stand down. It's at the end of the episode, he actually tells Burnham, "Oh, okay, I'll respect your wishes not to be involved with this high level mission because you think it'll be a problem for you meeting Spock again. I'll allow you to do that." And it's Michael that says, "No, Captain, I want to be a part of it." And he's like, "Oh, okay, great." The editing in this episode was particularly bad. As a matter of fact, there's a scene, if I'm not mistaken, there's a cut where Michael and Saru are talking, and she first learns about his death, and then all of a sudden she says, "It'll be my privilege," or something to that effect. And Saru and Michael are having a moment, which is manufactured out of nowhere because I thought they didn't like each other, or I thought they had a conflict with each other. Then on the next cut, she's all of a sudden on the bridge, and that just. In engineering, we get Jet Reno, who let's remember. The reason she was able to keep her crew alive on the asteroid, even though she's not a doctor, she's an engineer, I think they wrote her to actually say, well, the human body is nothing more than a biological machine, so it's comparable. Right, okay, that's how it works, right? All right, so in this episode, they decide that they have to somehow get into Tilly's skull, and Jet Reno, the engineer, asks if they have a laser scalpel available, and of course they don't. There's not one available, and they can't go to sickbay and grab one. But so then, of course, Jet says, "Well, let's drill in her head with this power tool." And Stamets is like, "Okay." I'm sorry, I didn't give Stamets credit that way. It didn't really go like that. It was more like, "Okay, let's drill into her skull with this." "Are you kidding? Trepanning? Is that what you're suggesting, Jet?" And she says, "Well, you got any other better ideas?" "No." "Okay, let's do it." It was more like that. I want to be fair. And so they drill into Tilly's head just for a few seconds with no anesthesia. And my man Rob Gallo over at Midnight's Edge, he pointed out that, and he was very correct, that when you have to fill in the gaps for the bad writing, it's bad writing. So I've had a lot of people tell me, well, she was kind of under anesthesia with the thing that was on her arm, because remember, she was kind of doped out. If I'm dripped with morphine or whatever and I'm kind of loopy, still put me under before you drill into my skull. That's all I'm saying. I'm putting it in my will right now. Put me completely under if you want to drill into my head. All right. Now let's get into the heavier themes. I want to talk about the bad acting. Like I said before, I thought Tig Notaro was going to be an interesting add to the cast. Scratch that. I think she's terrible. She reads all of her lines in a flat monotone, like she's reading off of cue cards. She seems like she's uninterested in being on Discovery, even though Discovery rescued her and her crew. I don't know, where's this manufactured conflict between her and Stamets? I don't get that. There should be a reason for it. There was, let's look at Spock and Bones. There was a conflict there because Spock was all about logic and Bones was very emotional, and they clashed. There was a reason for that. But you know what? That's because those characters have been established, something that is still missing from this series. Establishment of characters. I now know their names. That's great. But I tell you what, I barely know what any of them, except for maybe Saru, Tilly, Stamets, and Michael, well, she kind of switches in between roles. So my point is, I still barely know what each of these people do on the ship. I touched on bad writing. This show is full of bad writing. This episode is full of bad writing. Now we know 4 episodes into season 2 that Kelpians can detect ultraviolet rays. They can see in the ultraviolet spectrum, and that they have empathy capability. Okay, where did that come from? This is why you don't develop your characters, because then you can have them do whatever they need to do so you can get over any humps in the script. If you don't develop the characters and kind of set like production bibles for who they are, what they're capable of, what their skill sets are, then you can pull anything out under the guise of, well, we didn't say they couldn't do this. We didn't reveal anything of what the character could or couldn't do, so yeah, they can do that now. And speaking of Saru, since we're on Saru, did I miss in either all of season 1 or in the Brightest Star short trek, that part of the Vihari, whatever it is, the process which I was led to believe that the Vihari, the Great Balance, is simply where Kelpians agree that it's their time to go sit down around a big pole and a light comes down and the ball will take them. I thought that was part of the Great Balance. Now we learn that part of the Great Balance is that the Kelpians get sick and they have their ganglia fall off. So that's part of the biological process too. If you don't go sit around this pole, then you'll get sick and your ganglia fall. Okay, maybe if you understand that and realize, you'll be explaining it to someone who submits that the Alien franchise, which is 4 decades old, hasn't bothered to adequately explain the life cycle of a xenomorph. Now, if I wanted to get into nitpicky territory, I would say, why did the space ball that caused Saru that caused the biological process of Saru to speed up, why didn't it do it for the rest of the crew? Is it because Saru is empathic? Is that why? That doesn't seem a little implausible, a little far-fetched, a little like, let's throw this in because we got to get this script done. I spoke about Tig Notaro's bad acting. I'm going to go there. I know I'm going to get in trouble, so be it. I'm not that thrilled with Sonequa Martin Green's acting this season thus far. It just seems overwrought. It seems amped up. It seems over the top. She walks around with a scowl constantly. If anyone is seemingly as unhappy as she always seems to be, they should seek help. And that leads me into the next, I want to say, major theme. That whole manufactured love scene between Burnham and Saru. Now, I read the novel, what was it, the first Discovery novel, Desperate Measures or Desperate Hours, I think it was called. I assumed that novel was canon with the series, perhaps not. But even, let's put the novel aside, which does establish that Michael and Saru have friction with each other. I thought season 1 was all about that as well. I thought they established that Michael and Saru have friction, they have conflict. I can't remember why. I would assume that Saru is not really happy with Michael's tactics, that she fomented a mutiny. All fair game. So where does all this crying, weepy crap come from? Where's all this Saru, you are my family now? When have we ever seen that before? And let me go further. Because it seems manufactured and it seems manipulative and the scene goes on so long, I think it was a little bit of padding. That's why I felt absolutely nothing for Saru in his death throes. It got to a point where I was like, for Christ's sake, kill him already. Put him out of his misery. And in doing so, by proxy, you'll be putting me out of mine. Now, let me refine something that I said just previously. Sonequa Martin Green is not a bad actor per se. And I'm speaking only in the context of this season. I thought she was fine in season 1. But as I said before, I think she's over-emotional for someone who's supposed to be a Vulcan or whatever, or trained in Vulcan ways. She always seems frowning. She always reacts over the top, off the, really, like, that's her first reaction. Like when Saru first starts coughing. Oh my God, Saru, what's wrong? Okay. I would tell the directors, next time you're on set, it's okay to tell your actors, bring it down a notch. Bring it down a notch. Having said that, her ability to cry on cue and show that emotion was a high skill set. That was great. I believe that the character was upset. The problem is I didn't care because I didn't buy it. So you got to give me an episode where I see Saru from the beginning develop these symptoms, and you have to let that breathe. I keep saying that. You have to let that air out. It can't be like, okay, let's put in this scene where we see Saru is getting sick. Okay, let's do all this other stuff, then put in one other scene where Saru looks like he's sick. Okay, we got that done. Let's do all this other stuff with Tilly and going, with the thing on her arm and drilling in her head, blah, 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 and the space gas and the electricity going through when they're causing eruptions. And then we're going to do a death scene. It doesn't work like that. You got to slow it down, and you got to decide on what you want to show me. And if that is something that involves a death scene, you have to help me get invested in it. You can't throw all this quick cut, scene, ridiculous writing, scene, quick cuts, and then you want to slow it down for 15 minutes so I can start crying because one of the most beloved characters is dying. And by the way, we know he's not dying. I forgot to mention that. That's why it doesn't work either. Stop it. I'm sure most of you know the term Deus Ex Machina. It means God out of the machine. Literally is Latin for God out of the machine. What it tends to mean in screenwriting is that, or not just screenwriting, but in general, it means creating a circumstance to get your protagonist out of a fix. There was a lot of that going on in the context of dialogue in this episode. So Michael decides she's going to go to engineering to facilitate ejecting the warp core, I believe, to use it as a weapon against the space ball, whatever it was. She gets there, and she's like, why can't I get in? And Stamets is like, well, we can't because protocols, we're locked down in the warp core. You can't get to it. That doesn't make any sense, be that as it may. But then all of a sudden, somehow, that allows Stamets to realize at the last minute, oh, this is how we can save Tilly. We can talk to the thing. And then they come up with the power drill, whatever. So then Michael's at the door like, oh, right, and we can talk to the space ball. Guys, at least pretend like you thought about what you're writing. Listen, if things continue to go like this, then it's really going to taint it's going to taint how I felt about season 1. I can say that I enjoyed season 1, but the more I see these episodes in season 2, it makes me say, well, I did enjoy season 1, but I gave it so many concessions, thinking that, okay, it's like, a child that starts to crawl, then starts to walk. I'm not going to be mad that the child is not walking perfectly. Well, it's season 2 now. You should be at least walking where you can get from point A to point B without me criticizing you. So if you can't, that tells me, well, maybe I should go back and look at season 1, and I'll probably see all the flaws, and I won't give it the concessions that I gave it before, because I'm tired of doing that, because you have a problem. You really have a problem. I can't enable you anymore. But Discovery, so far you've got 3 average to bad episodes and 1 okay, decent episode. The decent episode being New Eden. And it still had problems. The pacing, the editing, leaps in plausibility, like handing over technology for no reason. So I'm just gonna say, I'm still there with you, but you get your act together. Okay, I'm gonna hang in there next week. I'm not gonna give it up, but I'm gonna hang in there next week. If nothing else, I will suffer the slings and arrows of this show to prevent you from having to deal with it. All right, let's go Discovery. Next week, we got another one coming up. I'll be there, and I'll be here next week. Take care.